Ndebele author and activist Themba Manzini's trip to the Boulders Mall in Midrand turned into a nightmare. It's after he was asked to leave the center by the mall's manager for wearing traditional Ndebele attire. Well, to speak to us about the effects of cultural shaming, we're joined by clinical psychologist Themba Manzini and Monica Bhuda, who is a PhD candidate in Indigenous Knowledge Systems at the Northwest University, as well as a lecturer of culture and heritage studies. Good evening to both of you, and thank you so much for your time tonight. Firstly, let me begin with you, Themba. Perhaps how do we begin to, explain the kind of trauma that one experiences after being shamed in the way that Mr. Manzini was shamed, because he speaks about a very deep pain that he has experienced, and some South Africans don't understand why he would feel the way that he's feeling.
Peperile, thanks very much. It's important for us to understand that discrimination really just attacks, it attacks who you are, your sense of being, and it elicits rejection, which is a strong and difficult emotion to deal with. So clearly the situation is experienced as debilitating for him, because there's a lot of attack that is going on in terms of his sense of identity and who he is, in a sense. So it's difficult to deal with such an emotion of rejection, and most of us will really grapple to really deal with feelings like discrimination, rejection, and the like. So in his case, it is clearly more a painful experience, and for any other person who has already went through the same ordeal.
What is the impact of continuous discrimination? So something that you experience on an ongoing basis. What is the impact of that on one's psyche?
So there are severe impacts that one will actually experience, and some of them we often call them psychological disorders. Some of them we could be looking at depression, we could be looking at anxiety. Under anxiety, we could be looking at panic attack, we could be looking at intense fear, we could be looking at post-traumatic stress disorder, we could also be looking at performance anxiety. So there's a lot, just to name a few, in terms of that. So what happens is that when someone is discriminated, and it happens over and over again, so we actually call that re-traumatization. So let's say this person has been traumatized, and when they go through the same ordeal, now they will be re-traumatized. So it's no longer, if I can just say it loosely, it's no longer one amount of trauma, but now it goes to the past trauma that has happened, even if it might be, it might not be related to discrimination. So that is what is happening, and it becomes difficult for one to deal with this. And for children who might be experiencing this, you might find that they start to be defiant, and they can have conduct disorder, and sometimes even for adults, they might even end up with antisocial personality disorder. So we're looking at something that can actually culminate into something that is catastrophic in terms of one's emotions and psyche.
Monica, let me bring you in here. Many people questioned how this could happen in South Africa in 2021, but most importantly, have this behavior exercised and perpetuated by a black South African?
What really happened to Thando shows how behind protecting and managing of indigenous knowledge of our culture is, because when you watch the video, what he says is the mall has their own terms and conditions when it comes to dress code. But now these terms and conditions do not accommodate African people. These are foreign terms and conditions. While here, we are in Africa. As a Ndebele and a person who lives where Ndebele people are situated, which is Mpumalanga, KwaNdebele, and who has seen Utando and many other men who were like that almost on a daily basis. For us and to us is normal, because also women or maidens, they also expose their upper body, and they go to the malls, and so at home this is accepted, but now I think it's because of the geographical area. So if there are laws put in place in terms of dress codes, they need to accommodate our own culture and heritage. For example, you cannot say to a traditional health practitioner who is a diviner, diviners, most of the time when they come from their initiation school, you'll see by the way they're dressed, by the way they look. So you cannot exclude or discriminate such people to say they do not meet the requirements to enter and purchase and become customers. So now this is a problem that in South Africa, as Africans, we are still foreign in our own continent and in our own in our own environment. So what really happened is a wake-up call to say, how far have we protected African indigenous knowledge systems? How far have we protected African culture and heritage in this global and modern world?
Monica, how do we begin to change the bias and the discrimination that exists towards whether it's, indigenous knowledge systems, languages? There's a whole plethora of issues that one can think of where, there has been a bias in our society towards.
Ceci, decolonization of mindset is a process. We shouldn't forget that our people have been colonized for a long time, have been taught not to love themselves, have been told that their culture is primitive, is backwards, and they need to accommodate, or they need to move with the times. So if our own people are against certain traditions, it's not because they are really against that. The mindset is years of training and years of colonization. So that's what happened with colonization. Our people were taught to hate themselves, and then this thing was passed from one generation to the next. And hence why you'll find a black person bullying another black person when it comes to their culture and heritage. You'll find this one saying, you are from Limpopo. People from Limpopo this, or you're from KZN, or you're from Mpumalanga, or you're Ndebele, your people are not recognized, all those sort of stuff. Because now, if we are against each other, there is no national unity. We can never work together to move the country. So now it comes to issues of tribalism. When you think your own people, your own nation is superior than the other, when you think that you are the most important, when you think that other people don't matter, or what they do is not really important compared to your people. So now it's a matter of years of colonization, and now we are fighting on our own as African people. There is no national unity. And there is this thing of, also when it comes to, there are people who would say they don't want, cultural marriages, mixing of blood. Those things, they still exist in the 21st century. So there is no Africa. These are just people divided and people who want to be dominant and dominate. And what they do is that they bully other cultures, is that they make you feel like you are less important, like your own people, your own cultural heritage is less important compared to theirs.
All right, let's